Hey Changemakers, I'm Molly Schreiber. I'm founder and owner and CEO of Challenge to Change Incorporated. At Challenge to Change Incorporated, we offer mindful education into all modalities of life. Through our mindful education, we are now offering a podcast called The Best Version of Yourself. On our podcast, we will be interviewing all sorts of changemakers who are living their best life and being the best version of themselves.
I'll be the best version of myself, spreading kindness and peace. I'll be the best version of myself.
Hey Changemakers, I'm Molly Schreiber, and this is the Best Version of Yourself podcast, where we bring on amazing human beings who are living the best life that they can live as the best version of themselves. And today, I have one amazing human being with me. Her name is Jordan Turner. She is our Mindful Education in the Schools Director. So she's all things Challenge to Change in our schools. So I'd love to introduce Jordan to you. Welcome, Jordan.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being my first guest on the Best Version of Yourself podcast. I couldn't think of a better change maker to have on the podcast than you.
Oh.
You've been with me for so long on this journey of Challenge to Change. And so I'd love for you just to give a little introduction of who you are and why you're sitting at this table and what your role is at Challenge to Change.
Yeah, so you said for a long time. How long has it been?
Years.
Yeah, like 2018, I think.
I think so.
That is so awesome. Yeah. So I absolutely love what you have created here at Challenge to Change. So previously, before I came on, I was a single woman. I lived out east for a couple years as a nanny. I loved working with children ever since I was young. I think I even took a babysitting class when I was 12 years old. And also at that same time, my mom had a baby. So I have a young brother who's 12 and a half years younger than me. So very motherly to him. So I just always knew that I wanted to be a mom myself. So then I was out east being a nanny, loved it. Very high socioeconomic family, right? Private schools that they went to. The parents were amazing parents as well. So if they're listening to this, hello, I miss you guys so much. Actually, the youngest at that time was just starting kindergarten, and now this coming year she's going to be a senior.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy. I know, it's so crazy. So I was there for 2 years, and I just saw a world that I never knew. I was born and raised Rock Falls, Illinois. Shout out, because that is where my heart always belongs, Midwest. I thought I was meant for something bigger. My Midwest blood. I'm like, I am meant for bigger worlds.
And I would believe that about you,
yeah,
Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah. So sorry, Mom and Dad. I am not going to live right next door like my other brother who does. Sorry, no offense,
but that's
Brett.
Okay.
It's okay. But I was like, oh, I'm meant for bigger. So I just moved out there and I loved it. But come and to find out, I actually am meant for the Midwest. Mm-hmm. I'm meant for a smaller town. So I decided to move back. And when I moved back, actually, I have born and raised very privileged, don't have a high ACE score, haven't had too much trauma. And my biggest traumatic moment was I knew I was already going to leave out east. And then like a month before I decided to leave, my grandpa was in hospice and he was basically waiting for me and my brother, who lived out in Maine at that time, to come home. So I packed up 2 years of my life overnight.
Wow.
Yeah. So I felt like clothes were just like coming out the floor. I don't
know that part of your story, Jordan. Wow.
Yeah. So we made it there and I had to say quick goodbyes, which honestly, we know that goodbyes are really hard, especially when I was so invested in these girls and in this family. They were my family for 2 whole years and I still stay in touch with them. So it actually, hindsight looking back, maybe was the best kind of goodbye to them. So then I came home and that was my first experience with loss. Like I said, privileged enough, but my grandpa was only 64 years old.
So young.
Yeah, so young. Yeah, and I was there when he passed, and very hard, but at the same time, I knew he wasn't suffering anymore. But I also knew that I couldn't leave my family again. I kind of thought once I moved back, maybe I would go be a teacher because that's what my degree's in. Maybe a teacher out in South Carolina or maybe Florida because I love the sun and my favorite color is yellow. Like I love just bright. So it's like I'm meant for the beach now. I'm meant for the big world. No, I'm meant for the beach. But going through that experience with my family, it really showed me that, no, I'm meant to be close to them because my parents, they're still together. They're wonderful. They're so loving. And then so I went and I did some interviews that same summer. So that would have been 2015. That's when I did my interviews at some schools. And I got this job at Jefferson Elementary in Davenport, which is still where I live in Davenport, Iowa.
Still one of our yoga schools. 6 years going strong.
6 years, yes. So when I applied for that job, it was actually a 5th grade position. And actually, I could start my story right here, too. So in my interview for my 5th grade teaching position, there was this man in my interview that I've never seen before, never met.
I wonder who that was.
I wonder who. So after the interview, he came up to me. He's like, "Mrs. Turner, you did such a great job."
Or, did he say
sorry,
Mrs.
he didn't
Turner?
say Mrs. Turner.
He was hoping it was Mrs. Turner.
Yeah, he said, "Miss Chapel, you did such a great job." And I was like, "Thank you." And I left. My mom's like, "How'd the interview go?" I'm like, "Mom, there is the hottest 5th grade teacher." That was the first thing I said. And she's like, "Okay, so how'd the interview go?" And yes, years later, we're now married. My name is now Mrs. Turner. So manifest what you want, right?
Exactly. There is power in manifestation for sure.
There is, yes. And, he's a big part of my why, and I'll share more about him and everything. But I actually didn't get that 5th grade position. And at first I thought, well, why not? I mean, I'm
amazing.
Lesson, yeah.
Why didn't I not
and
get that
my
job?
lesson was so intense, right? I was teaching these kids how to read, right? I was sitting down to their level, teaching them how to read. But I also didn't share that my student teaching was in Port Byron. It was a 4th and 5th grade split. So I was literally teaching 5th grade while my 4th graders were doing work.
Yeah.
So I knew being a nanny to a high privileged family. I knew we're teaching kids in a very small rural area. I didn't know what this school was about. So they were probably thought, well, we kind of need more of those social and emotional lessons. We just don't know if you're ready to take on your whole class, knowing what my background was.
Right.
But they still found a job for me because they knew how passionate I was about teaching. So I got the ESL position there. Thank goodness, because I went back and got my ESL endorsement, and I had some of those kids year after year after year because they stay in ESL until they test out. So that was incredible. But also within that same time, we were so low in reading at Jefferson that we had to do walk to reading. So I had a classroom of non-ESL kids, over 25 kids in my reading class. And
goodness.
Not a lot of you can see this room here, but my room was probably this big. And it was
tiny. Pretty tiny.
Yeah, and 4th and 5th graders. So that's when I really learned. I really learned what this school was about. Something that my school didn't teach me. I didn't know growing up, right? So that privileged family, that privileged first job that I had, I was mind blown. I mean, I had no idea that this world even existed. So these kids who are falling asleep, these kids who are throwing things, calling me names, not knowing how to manage their emotions in any kind of way. And long and behold, I realized that I didn't know how to manage my emotions and my feelings. So that first year of teaching, I actually got the mumps. My first
That's
year.
right.
Yeah,
That's
the
right.
mumps.
Yeah. Who gets that?
Who
gets
does that? Right?
I know.
Who gets that? Me, I guess. Right? Yeah, so I got the mumps. I also got high blood pressure. I mean, I was like not taking care of myself.
All the things that happen in education that not everybody knows about.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough, though, to have found yoga as a practice myself when I was a nanny. So also that first year of teaching is when I decided to go get my 200-hour yoga certification.
And you did that One Tree?
At One Tree
One
High
Tree
Yoga.
in
Yes.
Davenport.
Yeah. Because I'm
One of
also
our
like
sister
that.
studios now.
They are. Because I'm also like that. I'm also like, I can't just do one thing. So I also probably had a few jobs, and I was taking my 200 hours. So it was teaching, but I'm sure while I also got sick I always make my plate way too full, and just how I am. If I'm passionate about something, I like to go and get it. You know a lot about that. So I got my 200-hour certification. I thought, okay, I can give some of these tools to kids. So the next year I'm teaching. I don't know if you've ever taught adults and then you taught kids. It's way different.
It's so different.
So different.
Yeah. Why we
my
have
goodness.
Challenge to Change, because not everybody's meant to teach kids. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where I found Julie.
Strip Matter.
Yes. Yeah. So I found her, and she got me. She was doing some work in DeWitt, Iowa, and she was connected with you. She was a teacher, and that's where I found this. And so my boss put me through the 95-hour toddler kids teens yoga teacher training.
Yes.
And that is where everything transformed, because the reason she put me through that was that second year at Jefferson, our first grade teacher just up and left because he was just overwhelmed. He was burnt out. that's what happens when people are burnt out.
And that was before COVID. I mean, that was
before
the
2017.
Yes.
Yeah, 2017, the spring there. So we had this classroom of these kids who
were abandoned.
So they divided those kids up. It was our first kind of like self-contained classroom where there was a handful of like 6 of them that were in this classroom. The rest of them went to the other 2 first grade classrooms. And that's where my boss was like, you know what, let's put you through this and you just bring back what you learn. And so I was doing it there. You came in. Do you remember?
I remember. I loved teaching there. That was when I was like, oh my gosh, I want this to be one of our yoga schools in the future.
Yeah. And we were reading a book. You remember you were reading, I think it was with you. We were reading Mindful Monkey, Happy Panda.
Yes.
And there was a kid who was not paying attention. He was, I think, kicking like a locker at that time. And we asked the question and he answered it.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Yep. He does know what's up.
They're always listening.
They are always listening.
So then that year I was also doing a lot of it on my prep time. So I was doing these mindfulness tools, and during all of my prep periods, I was going into classrooms just because I believed in this work and I knew that those kids there. So Jefferson, Title I building, right? Low socioeconomic, very high need, lots of trauma that has happened. And I didn't realize it at the time on what secondary trauma was. I was really going through that as well.
And you were getting married and COVID was happening and all of that.
Gosh, and me and Kevin didn't even really start dating till that second year. So then once you start dating someone who's also teaching there, you think you're going home and someone's holding space for you, but
it
really
just doesn't go away.
No, because I'm telling him about my day, he's telling me about his, and we go to bed and we wake up and we do the same thing all over again. So that's one thing that I do share with teachers now is who's a person who can hold space for you.
Right.
Like not judging you, not trying to fix.
A therapist or whatever it might be, but who is your person?
And maybe it is, like your spouse, but it's acknowledging that that's what you need in that time. Like, hey, actually, I just need you to hold space for me. Just listen, just be there. Don't try to fix unless I ask for advice and support.
Amen.
Because, if you don't do that, then, you're not really letting go of any feelings, any emotions that you're having. So, so that happened. I kind of am just rambling on because I just kind of want to.
We love hearing stories of people who are living their best version. So you were navigating your time at Jefferson, and then it came to a time where Challenge to Change was growing so much, which, I'll share a little bit more about that story shortly.
Yeah.
But we needed you to come on full time, and the position was open, and you spoke your truth to us and said, I want to be a bigger part of this team. So you took over our yoga. At that time, it was called Yoga in the Schools.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember not asking for something until I knew I created enough for the business to be like, okay, I feel like I could come on.
Yes.
So I made sure, we had a few schools signed on in Davenport. And then I think right before I came on, we had like 10 signed on, possibly right before I left completely teaching.
And then the whole district eventually because of you.
Yeah. So, because it really came down to that, but also I just knew after 6 years of being there, and my husband, he's still in education to this day, he's a principal. I just knew that I couldn't give my kids what I really want to give them because I have 2 young girls now that and also to more students. Like I loved giving the tools to my students who I saw at Jefferson, but I just felt like I need to give it more. And now I'm coming to realize on how passionate I am about giving this to educators because of what they go through.
And what I love so much about you, Jordan, is you are running our Mindful Education in the Schools department, is what we call it now. We switched from calling it Yoga in the Schools to Mindful Education because that's really what we do is we teach mindfulness and movement, which we use the modality of yoga. But you are holding this space in a huge job, running a staff of 50-some mindful educators that we employ and go into our schools that we're in right now. But you also still teach in the schools. You still teach at Jefferson with our Mindful Education in the Schools program, which I love that you are still keeping that contact with that school and you're still keeping your feet on the ground, understanding how our curriculum works. Every year a school is on with us, they have a different year of curriculum. So you've watched Jefferson go from year 1 all the way up through year 6 next year. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a school like that is relationships. I mean, if you want to have any kind of classroom management, my number one tip is relationships.
100%.
But it also comes with, you can't ever leave. I can't leave. I hear some of my friends and they miss it too. But you also know, like, when is enough? Right. And, that's kind of what happened within my last year, just having that last final thing.
Can you talk a little bit about what that was? Because, at Challenge to Change, we also have a nonprofit we call Mindful Minutes. And it leverages community resources for our programming, whether it be in schools, whether it be in facilities, juvenile detention centers, healthcare facilities, workplaces. So we leverage community resources, but every year in our Yo Gala, which is our major fundraising that we do for Mindful Minutes, you tell your story that you're just going to talk about right now. Can you just share that? Because it's such a beautiful story, because it's your biggest why you really chose this work.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I love sharing it because I feel like more light needs to be spread on violence in that kind of way, and also on how our kids are facing some really hard challenges. So actually, it was just last Monday was, I don't know if you call it. Yeah. Is that what we call it? Yeah. Anniversary
I still, because it's a way of honoring them. We honor birthdays. It's their anniversary of when they left this world. Yeah. But tell the story.
Yeah. So that was, 2021. Yeah. Because it was right before my daughter was born. So I was 8 months pregnant, almost 9 months. I was right at the end, April. Almost in my last month of pregnancy. And again, my husband was there too, which is important to know. But it was a Thursday afternoon, probably around 3:34. We had a lockdown drill. There was an active shooting outside of our building a block away. And sadly, that's kind of, I don't want to say normal, but it happens at least twice a year at our school. So didn't think too much of it. We just locked down. And we come to find out, our boss comes in and she tells us that it's one of our students who has been shot. And he's being chills. He's being resuscitated, actually by her husband, who was a firefighter.
Oh my gosh, I forgot that detail.
Yeah, that's and I haven't shared a lot about who I thought it was. I think that's maybe for a different time, because there's another student that went through so much trauma. He was like, I was his go-to person. So in my mind, I'm thinking it's him. So I'm just,
and you're pregnant,
who could it be?
And you're anxious, and
and who? Yeah. What? Like, so come to find out, his name, DeVell Johnson, was shot down. He gang affiliation and was killed. He was not able to be resuscitated, and it's very sad because it was around 3:30, 4 o'clock when he should have been on the bus going home to his mom. He wasn't at his safe space, which is a school, sadly. So I know, I don't want to speak for my husband by any means, but I know that weighs heavy on him because he was really close with him, and he just thinks, what could he have done too?
Gosh, I love when you tell your story, because it always brings up so much emotion for you.
Yeah.
But it's your driving force, and you use that as such a touch place in this work. I mean, you really do.
Yeah.
When you tell the story of him, you light up, you cry, but those are tears of love.
Yeah, because I don't know if I could ever change, his outcome, but the next day after, because it was a Thursday, so Friday actually we did still have our diaper party that Friday. So I just remember that day so vividly, because when we came back to school, so my office was the library at that time. I was like the librarian, media specialist, because I was just teaching social and emotional skills to students. That's what I loved about my job. So when something like that happens, you get support all throughout the district. So we had tons of teacher innovators, leaders in the library, so we could go over before the kids came to school, like, what's our plan of action for this traumatic event that happened? Because kids are going to come to school, and I knew they were going to come upset. This was their friend, this was their brother, their neighbor, someone that they saw, all the time. So I knew we had a ton of support. So I'm there and still needed to do my job, but I was also going to just be there to support students. But if you know about relationships and what kids want, they come to this space, and who is the person that they want to talk to? Well, it's me. They knew that that was my space. They knew that that's the kind of person I was, and I was going to be that for them. So that day is like the biggest part of my why. I mean, I always will share his story, of course, but that day after, having kids hang all over me, sobbing, crying, not understanding, first of all, what happened, but then not understanding their emotions and how to work through them.
Right.
And then me sitting there, like I said, 8 months pregnant. And I remember holding it together, just going in this little hallway, and my husband just looked at me and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I just started like sobbing. And then it was like 10 seconds, and then I had to get it back together again. And granted, we went through a traumatic event, but I know there are so many teachers out there who go through things every single day where they break down, but they know that they have to get it together really quick, because we still have a job to do. We still have to be that safe person and that space holder for, like we were talking about, people with holding space. Like, that's what teachers do to students every single day.
Every day.
So I knew that I was lucky enough. I had Challenge to Change. I had that opportunity available because I knew that I just couldn't keep doing this, because I wanted to be a mother. That was my number one goal in life. And
a month later, Eloise.
Yeah. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a mom. I want to be a mom. So I knew that I just couldn't do that to the full potential that I wanted to, with having to hold space like I did that day. So I did make the decision to leave, because I also had a full-time position at Challenge to Change. And that's why I think I'll always share it as a part of my why, because now I'm able to give these tools and hold that space in the right kind of way, because you provide the time for me to work on myself, so then I can give it better to educators, to my own kids.
Right.
Yeah,
it's such an important
more
part.
Students. Yeah. So that is a huge part of my why. And then, of course, my 2 little girls.
Yes.
Eloise, she will be 3 in June. So 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago that this all happened. And then Reagan will be 1 May 15th. So yeah, I am crazy. 2 under 2 is what happened.
Been there, done that, girl. Been there, done that. But when you ask me for advice, I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm the best person to ask.
Oh, because like when you're not in it.
It's a little traumatic. My story when my kids were that young, but I'm like, oh, just keep smiling, it gets better.
Just keep smiling. I know she got up at 5 a.m. this morning. I'm like, okay, this is just short-lived. Or is it really?
I don't know. The twins always got up at 4:30 till they were probably 4 years old. But,
oh my goodness. So I'm just very fortunate to now be able to give these tools to more adults, more students, more kids.
And that's what I love, and that's the big reason, I developed Challenge to Change is myself, having been a former educator. I went to school thinking education was a program where you went in and you picked your school and you stayed there for 40 years. I mean, that was what my parents really did in education, my grandmother. I mean, you were devoted to education, and I was happy to do that. But my first husband and I were both educators, and many people know my story that I lost the love of my life at 30 years old. He was a principal and stayed back for his graduation, and I went to my little baby brother's graduation, and he was killed in a car accident. And being widowed with 3 kids under the age of 3 at the age of 30 was just a story in itself that I could go on and on. I could do a whole podcast on that and the experience that I learned. And, but we only got 45 minutes here today, Jordan. But, I went back into education that fall after Kyle passed. So he passed May 26th. So we're filming this podcast in May. I'm entering into that month of the time where it was the last of everything. And I'm coming up on 17 years here because my twins are graduating from high school on the anniversary of his passing. So it's a very special secular time for me, and I'm really grateful and really holding space for everything that's happening, because I'm entering into a new Molly era coming up. So watch out, Challenge to Change, what's going to happen, because every time I come into a new era, it's like, buckle up. Well, I guess that's why we're starting this podcast. But, when I went back into schools that fall after he passed away, I was a miserable human being, because I missed my person. I missed my life partner. I was raising 3 kids who got up at 4:30 in the morning. And, I moved my family back to my hometown, to Dubuque, and took my job back, and everything was going back in time, except the only thing different was he wasn't with us. And so starting that, I realized kids were different. Parents were different. I mean, I was different, of course, but the only difference from the time that I had been in schools before that until this time was the development of text messaging on cell phones. And everyone was always at a demand. And I always say technology is awesome. It's amazing. But just like with any new development in the world, we have to come up with like strategies and tools and prevention to like keep ourselves mindful and living in the present moment and not living in the future and not living in the past. And so I spent 2 years, back in education, and of course loved what I did, because how can you not love? If you're born to be a teacher, like you love it. Yeah. Like you're in it to win it, And then, during that time, I really practiced yoga daily. And meditation, and then started a 200, just like you did, found my way. And, that healing modality really helped me find love again, to get remarried, because I was able to really heal some of those deep-seated wounds. I mean, they still open up, but the way out of the cycle of grief, Daniel Kessler rewrote Susan Kubler-Ross's stages of grief and added in a meaning to bring you out of the cycle of grief, which is finding meaning. And my meaning was through the modality of yoga and mindfulness. And it was, bringing me out of that cycle of grief, able to find love again. And in that finding of love again, I realized when I did my 200, I don't want to be in the classroom. I don't want to be in those four walls. I want to implement these practices into kids' lives. Like I really want to bring mindfulness and yoga into the classroom. And so that's in 2013. I started the business of Challenge to Change and just kept going. I mean, I teach little kids classes here and there, and dive deep into doing my own 95-hour teacher training in Chicago, which I met some of my dearest friends to today.
And were you still teaching during?
No, I wasn't. I was a stay-at-home mom. Yeah, I stayed at home. I wasn't very good at it, Jordan, because
it's tough.
You're a teacher.
Praise to those stay-at-home moms. Seriously.
I mean, because stay-at-home moms have the hardest job, I feel like, sometimes, because they are raising the most important minds. It's their own minds. So they're emotionally invested, they're physically invested, and then they're asked to be on PTA, they're asked to volunteer for things. And of course, they're going to say yes to a lot of these things. And then they become busier than they would if they had a job.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, kudos to our stay-at-home moms, for sure.
Kudos.
But just trying to find, my way and what I wanted to do with Challenge to Change. And then in 2016, opened the physical studio, which then in the fall, this first school district approached us that we worked with and said, we'd like you to start coming into classrooms. And, we started with 4 schools, and we started a study with the University of Kansas on, the implementation of our curriculum. And the overarching question in the study was, does socioeconomic standing have an impact, on how the outcome of these students? And we found that it doesn't matter socioeconomic standing. All students need these practices. So it really fueled our fire at Challenge to Change to be like, and you've watched me over those years, as the fire was fueled, go, okay, we've got to expand. We have to involve more kids. We've got to get this out there. So the next year, we're in 9 schools, and the following year, COVID year, we were in 36, and then it shut down, and we had to reevaluate and took everything online. And that year after COVID, we were in 217 schools. We trained a ton of people in the 95, and we're still evolving at Challenge to Change. We still have our secret sauce, our 5 parts of practice.
Yes, secret sauce.
But we also have a new thing that we're doing called the MCP program. Yeah. Which, can you talk about it? Because you're the innovator of that. Because I always love it when people work with us at Challenge to Change and they become the innovators. I don't have to always be the innovator. Yeah. I can help be part of the engine, but you are developing this program. So I'd love for you to talk about the MCP program.
Yeah, so MCP, so Mindful Changemaker Program. So what that looks like, if you're familiar with Challenge to Change, right? So we go in, most of the time, we go in live. So we go in once a month and we teach these awesome lessons, and then we're out of there and we won't see them again till the next month. And I love it. It's great. It is, if everyone could have, as an educator, if I could have someone teach my class for 30 minutes anytime, sign me up. I'll take it.
It's the Cadillac program.
Right? Yeah. But then I got to thinking, we have all these educators who truly love what we do, but they don't know the students and the school as best as someone who works there. Yeah. And that is how these tools are going to be preventative and are going to be more habits for teachers and for students, as if they really truly are doing it every single day. Whether it is for 30 minutes a lesson or if it's 5 minutes or 1 minute. So this Mindful Changemaker program is just something I thought, like, someone there at a building or at a district knows the students best. Right. They know what curriculum they're using. They know what their schedule looks like. So what my goal of this is to make them what I call our Mindful Changemaker coach, to where they are the invested employee, this one person, and I meet with them 5 times throughout a school year. Right. And I'm sitting down with them and we're working on their personal wellness, right? Because I'm going to get trained even more in by 6 seconds.
We're so excited for that.
Through emotional intelligence. Yes. So we're going to take so many of those tools to really help develop their noble goal. What is their why? Like, I can speak on my why now because you've given me that time and that space to work on that. But as an educator, there's no one there to, and maybe there is at some schools, but most of the time they're just trying to get in their curriculum and get done what they need to get done.
And if they don't have their why, that's where the burnout can occur, because they're not connected. They don't have 100%. Your why, that beautiful story you shared. They don't have my why. And sometimes whys come through hard things.
They do. And if you can just come back to them, like, you can get through a hard time just to know that you're on the right track still, right? I'm still passionate about this work. I still need to continue to do it. So that's one of the tracks. And then we have teacher wellness track that would be a part of it too, to where then hopefully that Mindful Changemaker coach would bring some of these tools to their teachers, whether it's through professional development or other kind of courses. I would just support that one person because they, again, know their teachers best. They know when is their professional development? How much time do they have? Can they squeeze it in 10 minutes? Can they use a whole hour? And then that student wellness. So everything, our sauce, right? Those 5 parts of practice. Yeah. Like, what kind of mindfulness techniques can they bring into the classroom every single day? Every day, whether it's 2 minutes in the morning or if it's a whole building practice.
Yes.
Yeah, or if it's embedded within their curriculum that they're already doing. We don't want to be another thing on students, teachers, schools' plates. We want to be the plate, right? We want to support everything that they're already doing. And that's what I believe this Mindful Changemaker program can do, which is our goal. If we want to spread nationwide, hopefully continue to grow,
we need something last week, girl.
Yeah, we need something to where other people are just as invested as us. And I hope that is what this program does. But, it's going to be trial and error. We have a couple schools already signed on who know that they're going to be a part of the development process and see what works and what doesn't. And I think that training that we're doing this summer with emotional intelligence is going to be a huge piece on how we really make these tools practical, and they're using it every single day.
I know, and I love that this training we're going to do with 6 seconds will not only help us evaluate, like, the emotional intelligence of teachers and where they can grow and change and adapt and learn and develop their why, but we also can do it in the workplace too. Because all of our practices are not just for the schools. And you've helped us really develop that. And knowing that these 5 parts of practice that we use in our lessons in the schools are 5 parts that we can use in our healthcare facilities, in like juvenile detention centers, shelters, everywhere we are. And in our workplace wellness that we're growing as well. So let's talk about the secret sauce. So let's talk about the 5 parts of practice. So when I developed the 5 parts of practice, it was actually 7 in the beginning. Remember that when we took the 95
Well,
in the
you
beginning?
could say that it still is.
Yeah,
I mean, our big training, you can learn how to teach 7 parts.
And the 7 parts is meant for like an hour class in studio, because we also teach people how to have their own program, their own business that they can do. And that's further developed through our affiliate program, where people can become and create their own businesses, which I love. Like, I want people to have yoga and mindfulness as a career. Like, that excites me to think that there could be other people living the best version of themselves, their best lives, doing exactly what we're doing. So we've developed our affiliate program, but that's for another podcast. But our secret sauce originally had 7 parts, and we took out 2 of them and cut them down to the 30-minute lesson in the classroom. And we have the 5 parts of practice. And the 5 parts of practice, I want you to talk a little bit about each one. So the first part, the seated practice, can you talk a little bit about that?
And can I also share, because I talked about how I had that 200 hour and I made that comment, like teaching to adults and kids.
Yes.
And then that practice, these 5 parts, that's what stuck with students. That's what when we say secret sauce, that's why it's a secret sauce.
The structure.
The structure. Yeah. We all know, whether you are an educator or, I'm sorry, even if you have a dog or even if you have your own kids, like, they all need structure, right? The dog wants to know when it's going to go out. Like, that's the same thing with our students. They want to know what's going to happen. So with these 5 parts of practice, every single time they see it.
Yes.
And it might not look the same, right? So like you said, so the first part, seated practice. And I love that we just call it seated. I've went back and forth. Should it be a check-in? Should it be mudras? But really, it's all about just checking in on how you feel, whether it is with mudras or whether it is with an emotions chart that we have in our middle school and high school curriculum, or if it's just a conversation, journaling. It can be anything. But that seated practice is all about getting geared up for what you're about to learn, right? Acknowledging how you feel, recognizing your patterns on when you feel that way. So then we can do the next few steps, right?
Name it to tame it.
Name it to tame it.
So my favorite part of the seated practice is the lesson year 3, where we teach them to sit and breathe by themselves for a minute, and then we grow on to 2 minutes. Like, those are my favorite seated practices.
It's crazy.
What is your favorite seated practice?
I'm a mudra lover.
You're a mudra lover? Okay.
Yep, I could do mudras anytime, any day, because I just feel like it connects with kids so much. But I do agree on the seated practice, because you think that kids aren't going to sit there for that 2 minutes. And so as a teacher, you're like, oh, should I stop it? And you're like, no, wait, they're doing it. They're sitting quietly for 2 whole minutes. It's crazy.
I'm going to tell our listeners that's year 3 of our program. So after 2 years
get
of
there.
learning,
Get there.
Then they do it, but it's magic to watch. And then that teacher can use that tool every day for 2 minutes of silence.
And I think what you said about year 3, it's there because we're teaching them all those tools on what to do while sitting in silence, right? So
like
we're teaching them the mudras. We're teaching them breath practices. But so I love, so mudras is mindfulness for your fingers, for your hands, and that we use in a more positive way to really ask ourselves, again, those questions. What am I feeling? What do I want to feel? And how do I get there?
Right. And we could do another podcast on how we've changed the mudras to be energetically for kiddos and not for adults. So we got to move on. Okay, second part of practice, movement.
Movement. So this is where that yoga piece comes in, right? We never want that. That's kind of our niche. Is that the right word? Yeah, that's our little niche, right? Yeah. Kind of what sets us aside is we still have that mindful movement, because that's what yoga is. It's about mindful movement. It's not about if you can touch your toes. It's just about, we all learn better. Like right now, I can sit here for a few more minutes, but I might need to get up to move my body, because that's just how we're wired. So it's the same thing with kids. Like, we all know their attention span.
And when our thought patterns become negative, any human being needs an interrupter. And it can be breath practice, but most importantly, movement. It's that interrupter we need to change those thought patterns. So the movement piece. Okay. And that might be short, quick, and sweet. And then the third part is the heart of the lesson.
My favorite. Yeah, so in teacher language, because that's how I speak, it's like the objective, the I can statement. What do we want students to learn today? Is it more movement? Is it a great social and emotional book? We're going to teach them about their feelings, about how to work through it. Is it a breath practice? Trying to think of there's just so many. Right? We have 6 years of curriculum, elementary, 3 years middle school. There's 32 lessons in high school, so there's a lot of heart of the lessons.
Our trauma-informed, whole curriculum that we have, that you played an integral part in writing as well. Yeah. So, because we change up our movement in our facilities that we work with, just to be a little more trauma-informed. All our lessons are trauma-informed. So,
for sure, and then the last one is
the fourth part.
The guided mindfulness practice.
We got to get you recording some guided mindfulness practices. Jordan.
I can set the tone really well. So that's kids' favorite part, right? We call it yoga nap, because that's what they love to do, is just lie. And you, again, go back. You think that the most wiggliest kid, the most energetic kid won't lay there. Oh, but that's exactly what they need. I've seen teachers and principals in tears, literally in tears during that yoga nap time, because they're like, that's the first time that kid has probably ever laid so peacefully.
My favorite part of the yoga nap, and when the yoga story, the mindfulness, guided mindfulness practice is happening, is that time and space where the teacher can fall in love with the child again, because they may have been struggling with that child, with behaviors, with so many pieces, and they just are able to see them in their best light, as the best version of themselves. Just being a child, quiet in space, maybe have an eye pillow on their eyes, and maybe holding a mudra on their belly, and just breathing and being and stillness.
I love that. I need to do that to my 2-year-old. We all know that sometimes it's hard to remember that they're kids, right? They're kids, but I have empathy for teachers. I get it. I know that sometimes it's hard to remember. So I love that you shared that, because that is so true. So teachers, those are free on our website.
Yes.
So please, I always love to share that. Like, go to our website, find our guided visualizations on there, because you can play them no matter if you have our program or not.
And we're going to have a new one releasing soon that I just recorded, but it's the longest one, Jordan, I've ever recorded. It's 9 minutes and 45 seconds, which is the longest yoga nap, but everybody's telling me kids like that. But it's our superhero one. So it goes with our summer camp, our yoga camp.
Right. Yeah.
And it's all about the 8 competencies of social emotional learning and helping the kids realize that each of those superpowers live within them. So I'm really excited for the release for that one. But then the 5th part of practice, we got to finish that part.
Yes, the close of practice. So I always love to tell teachers, because I always get a little giggle, that I'm never going to leave them in their yoga nap and say, peace out, good luck. Like, no, even a 9-minute one, I might be like, okay, let's bring them out. So that's where we want to bring them out of that relaxed state of mind to the focused state of mind. So again, just like back to that seated practice, it's how do we now want to leave them? We want to leave them, like you said, like changing those neural pathways in their brain, their thoughts, their patterns, by saying a mantra or saying kind words to other people, whatever that might look like, to just check back in with yourself. How are you feeling now after this practice? And so that's the 5 parts. And the reason why I love it too is because, like this Mindful Changemaker program, it doesn't have to all go together either.
Right.
You can pull parts. Yep. You can pull little snips and do it when you have time, because again, that's when it's going to be preventative, is when we're doing it every single day.
Right. Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for the rollout of this program and for the future of it. But now is the time in the podcast of the best version of yourself, where I ask the change maker I bring on, the person that I think is living out the best version of themselves. I ask them the core 4. So I have 4 questions I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
And most of the time, people will get these questions ahead of time unless I have to educate them on the first question. Because the first question is, what is your noble goal? So we help all of our change makers at Challenge to Change. And through our MCP program, it will help people develop their noble goals. And in the workplace, also the workplace wellness, we do develop their noble goals. But all of the change makers employed at Challenge to Change have formed their noble goal. So they know exactly what I'm talking about. So some people on the podcast, don't be afraid to sign up for it, to be on my podcast, because I'll give you some education on it and I'll help you form it. But Jordan, what is your noble goal?
It is to empower universal connection and love.
Say that one more time. I love it.
Empower universal connection and love.
Yes, girl. I love it.
And I'll say, with your noble goal, at first it was long. I couldn't decide on it, because you want it to be so good. And then the more you share my why, the more I share my story, the more I talk to my girls and I go through hard times, the more I realize, oh my gosh, it's all, to me, it's all about connection. It's all about love, and it's universal. And I'm a huge on empower.
Yes, you are. It is you. It's like your namesake.
Like I just want to empower people to feel that, but to exude it too, right? To let other people feel that connection and to feel that love. Because when my girls get into schools, I want their teachers to feel that. I want them to feel that and to exude that. So
love is the greatest currency. So this is the first time going through the podcast. So I'm also going to share my core
Can I ask you? Can I act like I'm the... All right, Molly.
Yes, Jordan.
What is your noble goal?
Well, thank you for asking. So my noble goal has been honed many times, but it is to raise, it's got to be an action verb, raising happy, healthy, safe kids who make the world around them better than they found it. So that has been my personal goal with my own little kiddos from May 26th of 2007, when I lost my life partner, to raise those happy, healthy, safe kids to make the world around them better than they found it. But then it evolved into also what I do at Challenge to Change. So it's not just my 3 kiddos. It became my bonus daughter when I got remarried. And then it became every kid that we work with at Challenge to Change, and then all of our change makers, because they're kids at heart. So my noble goal will not be accomplished till the day I die. The last breath that I take, I will finally hear from the angels, "Job well done, my friend." And that's when I know I will have completed my noble goal. So,
and that's the bones of Challenge to Change too, right? Happy, healthy, safe. Like that's what we want people to feel when they're doing these tools.
I just got chills again, Jordan.
I love it. Love it.
Okay, next of the core 4, Jordan.
Yeah, okay.
And again, this may or may not be something you were prepared to answer, but I know you've done the work.
I have done the work.
All of our personal empowerment work. What are your top 3 core values?
So they are joy, love, and connection. And I will say connection just changed for me last Monday because I was sharing with other teachers. They were working on finding their core values.
Yeah.
And it was always optimism for me. Like I always loved optimism. I like to be an optimistic person, but I think, I want to be optimistic because I want connection.
Yeah.
Right? So no matter when my husband comes home with a negative day or a bad day, I want to still be able to connect with him. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to do it about being optimistic, which I've also noticed sometimes I need to reel it in a little bit. So that's also what I learned through core values, is that you can also have that as one of your action steps, is to not be overly optimistic in a time that someone doesn't need that.
Where it almost becomes a little toxic to them.
Yeah. Yes. So again, connection, right? So it's not really about being optimistic. It's about connecting. So joy, love, connection.
I love it. Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
I'm sure you were not prepared at all.
Well, actually, my top 3 core values have changed a little bit over time.
Okay.
My noble goals always pretty much staying the same. It's just always been wording that I've tweaked with. My top 3 core values, number 1 has always been honesty. You know, it really has. That's a deep-seated core value for me that I've done a lot of work on. Is like, and I know just being an empathic person that I can tell when people aren't honest or they're not authentic. Yeah. And so it is a core value for me because I can read it. I can read it in a blink of an eye. I can read it in body language. And so there's nothing I can do but accept it and love it as a part of me and embrace it and know that it's a core value. And when it doesn't feel aligned, to not walk with it. So that's always been number 1, and that stayed solid. Number 2 for me is spirituality. So that one has changed over time because I used to also have truthfulness, but I'm like, that's really the same as honesty, you know? So spirituality has always been a big part of me, and that's, again, probably for another podcast. You know, I'm born and raised Catholic, but then evolving through the passing of my life partner and finding my way in spiritual work and just who I am today. Like, I love every part of who I am today as a spiritual person, and it's bled into my personal life and my professional life as well. So that's number 2.
Okay.
And then number 3 is love. That one has changed. I just feel like love is a universal language, and every time we do our core value cards, like I'm like, love's a given, like family's a given, you know, like to me, but I'm like, no, love's not a given. Love is everything. And, you know, if I really have to look at our corporate kindness mentality we have at Challenge to Change, the overarching piece of it is love. Love of the people we work with, love of the work that we do, but love of the mission, but love, universal love. So I'm with you, Jordan, on love.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you said they've changed. I don't know if the listeners know, but because where did all this come from? Because you've taken that course how many times to really develop that? Do you want to share on that?
My dear friend, Dr. Liza Johnson, developed a course called Personal Empowerment. It's KCG, Know, Choose, Give. So we work on a 10 to 12 week program where the first part of it, you work on knowing yourself. And then you work on, once you really understand yourself, your core values, core beliefs, then you work on making healthy choices for yourself. And what those healthy choices might be. You know, some of them might be hard things to do, but again, we talk about how your why comes about when hard things happen. And then the final part of it in that 10 to 12 week program is, you know, giving of yourself, and giving of yourself in a loving and healthy way, not in toxic ways or over giving, and just being very healthy in your loving and giving. So I really learned about core values, 3 years ago now, 3.5 years ago. I took it for the first time. Yeah.
I think that's important. Even when I hear it, is like you said, that they've changed your core values. And I think that that's important for people to know. Like, start to recognize, like, when something happens, like, why did that rock you?
Yeah.
What core value? So I like that you
know, and they, when they change, like, it used to be honesty, truthfulness, and kindness, but now it's gotten deeper to spirituality and love, So I think now more that I'm doing the work as we do at Challenge to Change in our work, like, we do the work every day. I mean, we have honest conversations with each other. Sometimes that's hard, but they always come to good results, and doing that work has helped me recognize that my core values are deeper than I realized.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. But honesty is still important.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, number 3, Jordan.
Yeah.
Who has been someone who has inspired you to be the best version of yourself?
Well, of course you, but you're setting me up for that. Yeah. But if we want to get more on a personal level, I will probably say my husband, Kevin.
He's such a good man.
Yeah, he's doing the work. So he's a principal and he loves what he does, but he never loses sight of what I do. And he is always there to... I cry every time, just a crier, everybody. But I just, core value, love, it's in my noble goal. Like, he loves me no matter what. We love each other no matter what. And, he always just comes home positive, compassionate, loving, no matter how hard his day was. Like, he'll always show that to me. And he believes in our work. So who can't be inspired by someone who believes in you?
Jordan, I've always said there's so many reasons that I love you as a human being, as a member of Challenge to Change. But I love the relationship you have with Kevin. It reminds me so much of how Kyle and I were with our young kids. And you two are just killing it. You're doing an amazing job. And I admire you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And same for you. You seriously have inspired so many people.
Thank you.
To do this work. So who's someone who has inspired you to be the best version of yourself?
So, I mean, I know I talk a lot about Kyle, my first husband, a lot about him, but he was such a personal person, and he just made everyone feel like $1 million. And believe it or not, in our relationship, I was the quiet one. I was the one who was like, I don't want to say I was meek or anything, but I was quieter. He was the one, people knew us because of him, and, my husband now, Tom, says, I used to be known as Dr. Schreiber, but now I'm known as Molly Schreiber's husband, so it's because I think when he passed, like, so much of his energy and inspiration came to me because he is someone I admire. Like, I admire, someone said to me, when I met Kyle, I didn't know if he was truly that authentic or if he was a used car salesman.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He does sound a lot like Kevin. That's what my parents said about Kevin. They're like, I didn't know if that was real. And then I met his parents, and then, that definitely is. Yeah. And how nice they are. Yeah.
Oh. So and my mother-in-law, that's where he got that, is my mother-in-law. She makes everyone feel like $1 million and would drop everything and anything to do that. She is
incredible. Yeah.
So she sells eye pillows for us at Challenge to Change.
Oh, she's really incredible there.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Number 4, Jordan. How are you going to continue to make the world around you better than you found it after this podcast and every day forward?
Oh, I think continue to do the work on myself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So we get so stuck as a mother, as in our professions. I mean, in our society, it's work, right? Work. And we get lost sometimes, and we have to be the best version of ourselves. That's why I love this podcast. Such a great idea, because we can't give on an empty cup. So filling up myself, and every time I'm with you, I feel like go back, Jordan, do your work on yourself. It's like, I need to do that in order, because my girls and my husband, love connection. They're my number one goal.
Yes.
They're my number one why, but I'm not going to give them what they deserve and what they need if I'm not taking care of myself. So
I love that.
I'd say that. Yeah. What about you?
I love that.
How are you going to continue?
So after this, I'm going to go and I am going to be doing some work on a blog, because I love still getting this work out. But that's not really how I'm going to continue to be the best version, or make the world around me better than I found it, like, for myself. Because I love how you answered it, Jordan, because it totally pivoted. Like, I'm like, I'm going to write a blog about, as the marketing team's looking at me right now.
Right.
They're like, hey, get that done. But I am going to probably go home and first hug my kids. Maggie was home. She's my 20-year-old who's now in college, and she tore her ACL, and she's really struggling right now with all of that because it happened at dance, and it's halting her dancing career. And I've just been seeing a lot about how people really need 7 hugs a day, you know? And I know that I get caught up in things and I don't hug people enough, you know? So I'm going to hug my kids first, and they're going to be like, get away, Mom. No.
You're gonna be like, no, bring it back in.
They're pretty receptive. But just really make myself get at least 7 hugs a day. I know that sounds silly, but it's that connection piece. And that's how I'm going to make the world better. Because once I fill my cup, then I can help the world around me be better than I found it. So
I love that. Well, I'll give you a hug before I leave.
Thanks. So Jordan, thank you so much for being my first guest.
No, I feel
You're
so
an amazing
privileged.
change maker. In your little world of your family, in your greater world in Davenport, Iowa, and then your bigger world in the Midwest, and then just as the whole entity of Challenge to Change. So thank you. I see you, I love you, and I honor you. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah.
I'll be the best version of myself, spreading kindness and peace. I'll be the best version of myself.